Did you know that reading The Lord of the Rings can turn you into a far-right extremist terrorist? Of course you did. Obviously. It's the current year after all. Absurdity like these, it's daily at this point. The OK hand sign is one of white power today, okay? There is nothing that the world can throw at us anymore that will even mildly shock and surprise us, but even so. Let me continue as well before I completely lose myself here. Reading 1984 will also turn you into a far-right extremist, and God help you if you read Brave New World, because if you did, you are probably filling up barrels with artificial fertilizer right now and heading off to some governmental buildings. You might be wondering where the hell this came from. Well, The website, I quite like this website by the way, Bounding into Comics, did an article on a report which was in response to the response of a report to a report. Bureaucracy, banzai. About a British system called Prevent. Now, the idea of Prevent, when it was established, was to prevent radicalization in the United Kingdom, specifically Islamic radicalization. As, you know, the UK did have a few problems with that a few years ago. But Prevent seemed to have near universally failed to do what it was designed to do, because instead of concentrating on countering Islamic terrorism, it instead looked at the Lord of the Rings and thought, basically fascism. One might ask many interesting questions about how the hell this happened, but the general answer is that they took advice from very, very far-left organizations, which frankly probably didn't see anything wrong with Islamic terrorism, but were very worried about all of those damned right-wing extremists that wanted the, government to not be a massive surveillance state that brutally oppressed its population via authoritarian tyranny. Which is a problem, I guess. The report itself is long and dry and boring, like most governmental papers are, and we're not going to be referencing it all too much. I just hunted it down to see if the allegations were indeed correct, and they were. What I want to talk about is why on God's earth anyone would sit down and look at The Lord of the Rings, 1984, Narnia, amongst other things, and say, well, this is bad, and clearly a red flag for right-wing extremism. And hey, to be fair, they do have a point. If by right-wing extremism you mean skepticism towards a totalitarian authoritarian state. Which, that was about as good a definition as any these days, I guess. Oh god, this is such a retarded topic, and that also is the clue here. So, I've been saying recently that the pendulum has actually and finally begun its swing, and stuff like this is yet further evidence of that. Now, the report was quite a while ago. The report of the report of the report happened quite a while ago. But all of this, of course, takes years to actually get anywhere. And what has actually happened here is that the Overton window of these people had moved so far left that a book designed to warn against totalitarian and absolute governmental overreach is actually starting to look like, as the joke goes, an instruction manual. And anyone who goes against that, well, they're clearly a fascist. Because, absolute state power is something that those darnable fascists were never particularly fond of or anything. So, what this means is, the progressives, the extreme progressives, have become such a mainstream orthodoxy now that they view the actions of the state, even at its most extreme, as not only justifiable, but, well, theirs, in essence. Because what did the state do in 1984? Well, it policed speech, like the current progressives want to do with Newspeak. And they controlled people's thoughts, which the current progressives want to do and frequently try to do via things like hate speech laws. They tried to tell you what was and wasn't real, which, again, the current-day progressives tries to do constantly, with the recent Wu flu being an excellent example, where we were all told one thing and threatened with the consequences should we disobey our instructions, and then, years later, turns out, well, they were right, literally all along. The progressives have become the state. They have become the institutions. They have become the foundation of power and authority. But that is not actually as bad a thing as it sounds. Because surely, that means they're winning, right? That means that we're all screwed. No, the exact opposite is in fact true. Because they have in reality already been in power for years and years and years, which is why they were able to push through all of the nonsense I talked about just a second ago. The progressives have already been the dominant political force for probably a decade or so now, and only very, very recently have their grasp begun to slip, only ever so slightly, in the realms of entertainment. And very soon, in turn, the rest will follow. Because the spell is no longer in effect. There is no longer any pretending that they are the beaten and oppressed underdog, that they are the minority in any way, shape, or form. They are the orthodoxy, which is a beautiful word. This article right here came out not that long ago, and boy, when I saw this was the moment I realized that we had won, and that now we were simply just on the long track to victory. Vanguard's CEO bucks the ESG orthodoxy, the environmental social governance orthodoxy. The ESG is at the heart of nearly all of our problems, with endless investor money pouring into wokist nonsense continuously, allowing even the least profitable of endeavors to continue grinding on for an eternity, regardless of whether or not anyone actually purchases what they're selling. And now, that has become the orthodoxy. Going against that is now the rogue maverick move, because the orthodoxy is always the waning power. It is always the falling position. It is always the loser. Nobody roots for the orthodoxy. Nobody wants the establishment to win, ever. And now that, again, the progressives have become the establishment, the days are numbered. And the reason why they are numbered is because, exactly like this report, started nonsensing on about right-wing extremism being caused by the Lord of the Rings. Even the most clueless normie will look at something like that and start raising some serious question marks, as indeed the UK did as well. The two responses to the report looking into Prevent basically came to the conclusion that Prevent had completely failed in its duty. It had become ideologically conquered, and so moved away from its actual objective towards stroking its own fallacious political pee-pee in everybody's face. And now that it has become acceptable to actually point that out and hit the person, stroking his winky right in front of you, their power will disappear awfully quickly. Which should hardly come as a surprise, as they have elected to side with literal Big Brother. God. This is a very ridiculous timeline, but I suppose it's good that it's slowly but surely coming to an end, if nothing else. And it always had to be this way. Because, of course, the primary purpose of a lot of the things that the extreme edge of the progressives did was to demoralize absolutely everyone. To build a hopeless, dark, and gritty asshole world where people had to reach for the light of socialism for final salvation. It turns out, however, that when shit got darker and darker, well, the socialists were the one pouring the oil on. And they'd been doing it for so long, so goddamn blatantly, that even the blindest of idiots were looking up and starting to wonder why they were doing this to them. That is the benefit of the modern-day internet. There was a very interesting little portion of 1984, I remember, where the main character went out of his own little bubble and encountered some normal people and realized that they had completely different worries than him. They seemed to live in a completely different world than him, straight up, because he was essentially a part of the intelligentsia, a part of the institution. He was seeing all of the flaws from the inside, and so they were far more personal and pressing to him than some rando who worked in the mines. But fortunately, now, with again the internet, the person working in the mines will be able to look up just as readily and see the shit barreling down towards him too, along with the face of the one pouring. So cherish these last few waning years of absolute insanity, as once it's all over, you'll almost miss it when it's done. You'll look back at it and go, man, those were retarded times, because they will have been. Until the pendulum begins its upwards climb on the other side again, and we get to be right back here yet again. The beauty of the modern world. I would love to see Harry Potter be cancelled a third time in my lifetime. First from the conservative Christians, then from the left, and, well, somebody extreme right the next time around. Maybe I'll even live to see a fourth. That would be funny, if also slightly demoralizing. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for listening, and I hope to see you all again soon. Have a good day.